Here today's lesson would be Bible Archaeology Lesson 3. And the theme of our lessons will be Evidence of Genesis Narrative. That means many story or history are being mentioned in the book of Genesis. And we are going to say through all of them with the help of archaeology. What are the things we have found regarding those Genesis narratives? So, let's start the lesson. The Garden of Eden. Regarding the location, the sites where this garden has been located, could archaeology or science help us in determining the place, the whereabouts of this garden? Let us see. Scripture states that a river went out of Eden and parted to 4 rivers. The name of the 4 rivers were the Pishon, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Euphrates. That was mentioned in Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. So this part of the history is very primitive indeed, very primitive, but still then, the exact name of the river could be mentioned. The 4th river is well known today, that is Euphrates, still Euphrates until today. And the 3rd, Hiddekel, is the ancient name of Tigris, that was also well known. So since we could identify directly these 2 rivers, Euphrates and Tigris, every student could easily find out where these 2 rivers passes through. The first we have been identified by Professor Frederick Delitz. This Professor Frederick found out the other 2 as Pisanu and Guhana. Now these are not a river anymore, but these 2 rivers are being modified into irrigational canals of Mesopotamia. So see, the names also have some similarities. Gihon will be Guhana and Pishon will be Pisanu. So these other 2 rivers are also found in the form of irrigational canal. He located the sites of Eden just north of Babylon. So remember, just north of Babylon, not the south. Because a river went out of Eden. Okay. The Bible doesn't say that. The 4 river passes through the garden, but it says that a river went out of Eden. And it split into 4 tributaries. So for that reason, the garden should be in the northern part of Mesopotamia, northern part of Iraq, and which may be more nearer to Mount Ararat, just north of Babylon. The important thing is that Genesis located the beginning of human life in this very region, which archaeological research has demonstrated to be the cradle of civilization. So with the help of archaeology, with the help of general archaeology also, people found out that human civilization first started in this part of the earth, that is in Mesopotamian region. So even those who are not Christian, those who are not the believers also, are very sure that the first human civilization first flourished in this part of the area, in this part of Mesopotamia. So it is said, this part of the earth has been called the cradle of human civilization. So if God put man on earth, that means it will not be far from these places where history has proved that human civilization has started. So both Genesis and archaeological research are in tune with this finding. So we have already shown some of the maps before in the Old Testament survey. So no need of showing those maps again. Now the next part is the fall of man. The fall of man refers to the temptation of Adam and Eve, and they're being cast out from the Garden of Eden. The fall of man means that part of history. In the last century, what was found? A seal was found at Nineveh. A seal means some types of carving on a stone or on a metal plate with some pictures on it. Okay, a seal. A seal was found at Nineveh. And what does that seal depicts? Depicting a man and a woman seated on either side of the fruit tree. To the left of the woman stands a serpent. So in that seal found at Nineveh, it was found a man and a woman sitting on either side of a fruit tree, and to the left of the woman was found a serpent. So even the people of Nineveh, in those very olden days, even before Moses wrote the book of Genesis, the people out there still remember the story of Adam and Eve during their own time. Otherwise, how could they carve out such images, which is very similar to the biblical narratives of the temptation in Eden? So if such seals, if such stone carving could be found out even in the city of Nineveh, that means the fall of man, the story of the fall of man, the story of Adam and Eve was very popular in the ancient world. Okay, was very popular in those ancient times also. In 1932, E.S. Spencer of the University of Pennsylvania found a man, a woman, and a serpent. So in another place also, besides this Nineveh, where the Assurbanipal library has been found, besides this place also, even E.S. Spencer also found another seal. The picture is not exactly the same, but the design and the overall graphic picture is same. Where a man, a woman, and a serpent was found in that same seal. As I have told you, I will send those in the WhatsApp. You can see those pictures. A man, a woman, and a serpent. These seals may preserve a tradition of the actual temptations in Eden. So the only conclusion which we can draw from this finding is that these seals preserve a tradition being handed from one generation to another. The story of temptation. It shows that this is the truth, the story or the history of temptation is nothing but the truth. Otherwise, how could such unbelieving nations also could still possess all this story? So even the fall of man has been found through archaeology. The Bible narratives of Genesis chapter 3 has been elaborated through the findings of this archaeology. And the third point, the beginning of civilization. The beginning of civilization. The beginning of science and technological development, so to say. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 22, we have come across a story, a history of Tubal-Cain. There it says, in Genesis 4:22 says, Tubal-Cain was an instructor of the science of metallurgy and craftsmanship of bronze and iron. So Tubal-Cain was an instructor of science of metallurgy and craftsmen of bronze and iron. So our Bible, our Holy Bible, in the first book, in the 4th chapter itself, have talked about the bronze as, the iron as already. So, human civilization has already started, had already flourished in this part of history. And in history also, outside the Bible, in history, we have learned that the use of copper became fairly common by 4000 BC or earlier, as evidenced by the discoveries at the site of Halaf and Chagar Bazar in northwest Mesopotamia. So in Halaf and Chagar Bazar, archaeological findings shows that people of ancient days, as old as 4000 BC, people start using copper. So copper, the use of copper was before the use of iron. As you may know, the melting point of copper is less than iron. So people in ancient days can start melting this copper. After that, when they could start melting iron also, when they could start producing iron, when iron is mixed with this copper, it comes to another metal. We can make another metal out of the two. So like that, the use of copper has been prevalent already in 4000 BC, has been proved by by archaeologists. And from that, our narratives of Genesis chapter 4, verse 22 can be proved. The time frame of this Genesis chapter 4 is also around 4000 BC. So through the findings of archaeology and through the chronology of the Bible, these two can be in parallel. So for that reason, the findings of archaeology could prove that, could elaborate the Genesis narrative that bronze and irons are also being known in those ancient days. And the fourth point will be the long-lived patriots. The Bible mentions the patriots means from Adam to the days of Noah, people lived for almost 1,000 years. So, before the archaeological discoveries of the Sumerian king lists, people do not believe the Bible. Critics say that the Bible is wrong by telling us that people could live for more than 900 years. But archaeological findings in around Mesopotamian region has proved that people could live even longer than that before the deluge, before the flood. As we have mentioned yesterday, even the Babylonians possess a good knowledge of the flood. In that epic of Gilgamesh, there is a story narrated by Ufenitim, who says that he was being saved from the flood by one of the gods. There, in that story he had narrated, in the epic of Gilgamesh, that story is very similar to the story of Noah. We found in Genesis chapter 6. So in that we have known that the people of Babylon where civilization started, where human civilization started. Those people had a good knowledge of the flood. And so with that, they have made a list in one of the big stone. In one of the stone, they have written down the list of the kings. The list of the kings who ruled before the flood, and the list of the king who rules after the flood. And in that list, what we have found out is that the people who ruled before the flood lives more than 10,000 years. And the people who rule after the flood lives only around 300, 400 years. There has been found that Sumerian king's list has been found by archaeology. So with the finding of that Sumerian king's list, those who do not believe the Bible narratives, when they have seen in their own eyes those archaeological findings, believing the Bible, the longevity of the patriarchs in the Bible is just believable compared to the Sumerian king list. Because in that, the longest king reigned 43,200 years. That is very unbelievable. But still then, it has been found in archaeology that the Sumerian kings ruled this much year. So, this Sumerian king list, if you type in a Google Sumerian kings list, if you have typed, you'll see the details of those kings and the number of years. But here there is a doubt that their counting system might be a little different with this modern days counting. They do not write the number as you have written, but they have written the number into a power 10 like that. So if that is true, that means this number of years might be less than this actual years. But still then, what we have proved is that even the Sumerian people had recorded that people before the flood lived for thousands of years. That is the proof we can have from this archaeological finding. Genesis 5 tells us a number of men who lived for hundreds of years each. It is interesting to observe, however, that greater length of human life in the earliest periods of human history is also indicated in Babylonian literature. From the writings of Berosus, a Babylonian priest of the 3rd century BC, a Babylonian priest of the 3rd century, wrote this king's list. We have long known of existence of Sumerian king's list, which reported unbelievably long reigns of king before the flood. The original list record a total of 241,200 years of long reigns of pre-Diluvian kings in the Mesopotamian cities. The total number of years the Mesopotamian kings rule amounts to 241,200 years. Those are the total number of years the pre-Diluvian kings of Babylon ruled the earth. That has been recorded in their literature. The longest reign is 43,200 years. Reigns assigned to kings after the flood repeatedly decreased until the end of the list. They are down to 100 years. So in that same list, after the deluge, after the flood, the longevity or the length of the reign of their kings comes down to hundreds. from 10,000 to 100. This same decrease is to be observed in subsequent chapters of the Pentateuch. So though the figure may be different, but the pattern is the same. In Genesis also we have found that people of ancient days lived for hundreds of years, almost 1,000 years. And after the flood, it has been decreases to 130, 120. After that, in the book of Psalms, we are being told that the lifespan of human would be 70 to 80. So the same pattern of decrease has been found in the Bible. So through this discovery of the Sumerian king's list, many critics has been silenced. If they don't believe what the Bible said, how could they believe the records of the Babylonian? So these findings, archaeological findings of Babylonian king's list, has greatly helped in believing the Bible, which talks about the longevity of the life of the patriarchs. Now the fifth point, the flood. Let's say the flood. We'll elaborate this in the other back page. Genesis flood has at least engulfed all mankind, if not the whole earth. Why? The Bible says that it covered the whole earth. It is so. But since some people do not believe it, let us at least say this one. Genesis flood at least engulfed all mankind. All mankind means wherever humans are there in those times, if not the whole earth. Because of certain indication in the Genesis narrative, and because on all continents and amongst all people of the earth, flood accounts have been found. Flood accounts have been found. This account all refers to a destructive flood occurring early in their respective tribal history. In its case, one or a few individuals were saved and were charged with repopulating the earth. To that, anthropologists have collected between 250 to 300 such flood stories. So you can see, you can read in your own. Genesis flood at least engulfed all mankind. Cover the places wherever human lived in those days. But we have to believe more than that it engulfed the whole earth. It covered the whole earth. Because Genesis had said so, and also all continents and amongst all people of the earth have this flood story. Even the tribals also have this flood story. And the common similarities in all the story is that in that flood, only few individuals were being saved and they were being charged with repopulating the earth. So among the 250 to 300 flood story, I have given you here in the back page, only 15 of those selected flood story I have read yesterday. And I have reprinted out at least 15 of them. Let us see the story. Flood story from around the world by Mark Isaac. By Mark Isaac. If you type that, you will see the details of those 300 flood story. You can see, you can read those 300 story. So number one, let us see. The Greek flood story is very similar to the Genesis narrative. Since the Greeks were the first educated people, so to say, so their records, their ancient records is very similar to the biblical records. But the Greeks say that Jews, their greatest god, Jews, sent a flood to destroy the man of the Bronze Age the Bronze Age, isn't it? The bronze. After Copper Age, it is the Bronze Age. So the time frame is not different from the Bible. Prometheus advised his son, Deucalion, to build a chest. To build a chest means to build an ark. All other men perished except for a few who escaped to high mountains. Deucalion and his wife Phrygia, after floating in the chest for 9 days and nights, landed on the mountain Parnassus. When the rain ceased, he sacrificed to Zeus, the god of escape. So, the pattern is very similar to biblical narratives. So here, Deucalion advises son Deucalion to build an ark. And the landing place is not Ararat according to them, but it is Parnassus. And after the landing of the ark, they also have made sacrifice, as Noah did. So though the story is different, but the pattern of the story is very similar to Genesis. The first race of people was completely destroyed because they were exceedingly wicked. This is what they have told. The fountains of the deep opened, the rain fell in torrents, and the river and seas rose to cover the earth, killing all of them. That is even what the Greeks believe. The Greeks do not believe the Bible, but they still have this flood story, which is very similar to the Bible. Deucalion survived due to his prudence and piety, and linked the first and second race of men. Onto a great ark, he loaded his wife and ark and children and all animals. Okay, this is what the Greek writings had shown us. And the Romans, I'm selecting the renowned, the popular ones only, which you may have already known. The Roman believed that Jupiter was angry. Jupiter angered at the evil ways of humanity. Jupiter is their god. Jupiter resolved to destroy humanity. He was about to set the earth to burning, but considered that might set heaven itself afire. But Jupiter is afraid that if he set fire on the earth, even the heavens will be on fire. So he decided to flood the earth instead. And for that reason, he caused flood on the earth. This is just the shortcut, only the first sentence I have noted down. The details you can read in that book. Number 3, Egypt. The Egyptian people, what do they believe? People have become rebellious. Atum is their god. Atum said he will destroy all he met and return the earth to the primordial water, which was its original state. So they caused a flood. The story will continue like that. So even the people of Egypt, they have their own tradition that people have become very rebellious. And the gods of Egypt, Atum, said that he will destroy all he met and return the earth to its primordial water. So the story of creation begins in such a way that a pyramid, a cone-shaped mountain, arose from the water. So they believe that the world was started through that water. So Atum says that he'll bring back the earth to its original condition. That is the primordial water, which was its original state. Number 4, Persian. What does the Persian believe? How did the Persian recite the story of the flood? In early times, the earth was full of malign creatures fashioned by the evil Ahriman. Ahriman is a devil, like Satan in the Bible. During the Persian day, during those ancient times, the Persian believed that the earth was full of malign creature. Malign creature means very fearful creatures. fashioned by the evil Ahiram, made by this evil god. The angel tester, the star Sirius. The angel tester descended 3 times on the earth in the form of a man, in the form of a horse, and the form of a bull, respectively, to look over what took place on the earth. And after that, through his finding, he had caused flood, causing 10 days and nights of rain each time. Each raindrop became as big as a bowl, okay? Each raindrop became as big as the bowl, and the water rose the head of a man over the whole earth. So this also not so much different. The pattern is not so much different, though the story is different, but the pattern is very similar to the story of Noah. That is what the Persians still have in their mythology. Number 5, southwestern Tanzania. What did they believe? The rivers began flooding. God told 2 men to go into the ship. Here it talks about 2 men. Taking with them all sorts of sheep and animals. All sorts of sheep and animals. The flood rose, covering the mountain. Later, to check whether the water had dried up, the man sent out a dove. Okay, a dove, that is same in the Bible. And it came back to the ship. He waited and sent out a hawk. But this hawk is different now, which did not return because the water had dried. The man then disembarked with the animals and seeds. So in this story, in southwestern Tanzania, in their tribal history, they have this story, which is very similar to the Bible narratives. Here he says about 2 men only. And number 6, in modern Siberia, what story arises? Let's see. 7 people were saved in a boat from a flood. They said 7 people, the Bible says 8 people. A terrible drought followed the flood, but the people were saved by digging a deep hole in which water formed. After the flood, there is a drought again. However, all but 1 young man and woman died of hunger. Among the 7, only 2 survived. Only 2 survived in that drought. These 2 saved themselves by eating the mice which came out of the ground. The human race is descended from this couple. That is what the Siberians believe. Remember, they are not believers in the Bible, but they still have this story which they believe. Number 7, North Central Siberia. Flood water rose for 7 days. The Bible says it rained 40 days, 49. But they say it rained for 7 days. Some people and animals were saved by climbing on floating logs and rafter. Floating logs and rafter. It doesn't mention about the boat, but it still mentions about a boat like logs and rafter. A strong wind blew for 7 days and scattered the people, which is why there are now different people speaking different language. Okay. This story even speak about those Tower of Babel, which you have learned in Genesis chapter 11. So the story is very compact, but it can teach about the truth of Genesis. After the flood, what happened? A strong north wind blew for 7 days and scattered the people. And because of that wind, which scattered the people to different places, different language was born. That is what they believe. Which is why there are now different people speaking different languages. So in that story, the division of the people was described in this story. And in the Hindu belief, what does the Hindu believe? Even the Hindu also have a flood story. In what form? Let us see. It is almost similar to the Bible narratives, even the Hindu. Manu, the first human, according to Hindu, and Satarupa is the first woman. We have already learned. Manu, the first human, found a small fish in the water. The fish begged protection from the larger fishes, in return for which it would save Manu. So Manu helped that fish by putting in a pond. After that, when the fish grew bigger, he put in the larger pond. After that, he put in the river. When the river is small for the fish, he saved again the fish and by putting in the ocean. So for that, the fish was so happy, so glad, and says that one day he will save him. The fish warned Manu, in return of which it would save Manu. The fish gave warning to Manu of a coming deluge and told him to build a ship. That small fish had told Manu to build a ship. When the flood arose, the fish came, and Manu tied the craft to its horn. Manu alone of all creatures survived. He made offering of laughter, butter, sour milk, wheat, and cuts. From this a woman arose, calling herself Manu's daughter. Whatever blessings he invoked through her were granted him. Through her, he generated this race of mankind. So even the Hindu also have a story very similar to the Bible. Here Manu alone, all creatures survived in that flood. Okay? And after that he made offering. The Manu made offering. But through sour milk, wheat, and cuts. Okay, and this is how the Hindu worship gods. And yes, in their sacrifice. From this a woman arose, calling herself Manu's daughter. That may be what we call the Satarupa also. Whatever blessing he invoked through her were granted him. Through that sacrifice, God was happy. And whatever blessings he invoked on that day, on that particular day, was granted to him, granted to Manu. And through her, he generated these races of mankind. So from that Manu, all human race had been started. That is what we have already learned in religion also. From Manu's head, the Brahmins came out like that, isn't it? So all races of mankind had come out from that. So the nearest one, Lusai. Lusai means maybe the Mizo. The British record the Mizo as the Lusai. And during the British day, even Manipur, even this Tripura, seven sisters of Northeast are all under Assam, isn't it? So from Assam, all these different states has come out from Assam. Even Meghalaya also Assam during the British day. So here this writer had said that the Lusai from Assam means now it will be Mizoram, of course. The king of the water demons. Okay, the king of the water demons fell in love with the woman Ngai Ti. Ngai Ti means loved one. She rejected him and ran away. The king of water demons was in love with the woman Ngai Ti. She rejected him and ran away. After that, the king of the water demons pursued her. In order to catch her, he pursued and surrounded the whole human race with water. On the hill Funlubuk, said to be in the far northeast. Threatened by water, which continued to rise, the people threw Ngai Ti into the flood, which then receded. So the people are afraid that all of them will be drowned in that rising water. The people throw Ngai Ti into the water. Means the people gave the woman, sacrificed the woman to the water demons. And from that the water recedes. we may not have the story, but these British authors still have our forefather folklore. The people threw mighty into the flood, which then receded. The receding water carved great valleys until then the ark has been leveled. So even the Lusai, even the Mizo have this story. We may find the details in some other books, but here it has been summarized. The receding flood water carved out these mountains and valleys in our area. Carved out great valleys until then the ark has been leveled after the flood. So this is even what the Lusais also have in their folklore. And in Karen Burma, the Karen people of Burma, two brothers survived a worldwide deluge on a raft. Two brothers. The water rose until they reached to heaven. The water rose until they reached to heaven. A mango tree grew from the celestial vault, and a younger brother climbed up to eat its fruit. But the flood suddenly subsided, stranding him there. There is a flood, and the two brothers. And out of nowhere, one very big mango tree grew, and the younger brother had climbed up that tree to get the fruit. But the flood suddenly receded, and he was stranded there. That is what the Karen believe. And the Chingpo of the Upper Burma, what did they believe? When the deluge came, Paupo, Nanchong, and his sister Changpo set themselves in a large boat. That is what the Upper Burman people also believe. And what did the Chinese believe? Let's say the Chinese. The Supreme Sovereign ordered the water god Gong Gong to create a flood as punishment and warning for human beings' behavior. Okay. This Chinese also very similar to what the Bible said, that the reason for the flood. The Supreme Sovereign Gong Gong, okay, to create a flood as punishment and warning for human misbehavior. Gong Gong extended the flood for 22 years. Here, according to the Chinese folklore, 22 years flooded. And people had to live in high mountains, cave, and in trees, fighting with wild animals for scarce resource. But it seems the Chinese flood did not engulf the whole of mankind. People are being saved by climbing up the high mountains. That is what the Chinese say. But here, it flooded for 22 years. How could they survive such long? Western Australia have their own flood story. What did they say? Long ago, two races of people, one white and one black, live on opposite shore of a great river. At first, they were on friendly terms, intermarrying, feasting together. But the whites were more powerful and had better spears and boomerang. So they came to feel superior and broke off relations with the black people. Sometimes later, it rained for several months. The river overflowed and forced the black to retreat into the hinterland. When the rain stopped and the water receded, the black returned to find that their neighbors had vanished under a white sea. See, these black people. So this story is in favor of the black people, isn't it? After the flood, all the white people vanished away into the sea, into the White Sea. And here, the similarity, this is in Australia. So this folklore or this story, these legends, maybe the whites, the original people of Australia are the Aborigines. They may be blacks, they may be the black people. But the foreign invaders, the whites, had conquered their lands. So because of their history, they may have like this story. But what we are interested here is this one. Long, long ago, those two races lived together. At first, they were friendly terms, intermarrying, feasting together. This intermarrying, feasting together is very similar to the narratives of Genesis chapter 6. When the sons of God have married the daughters of men, that marrying together produced the giants. That is what we have seen in Genesis chapter 6. So though the story is different, but the pattern and some of the purpose are very similar in the Bible. In Alberta, the world was flooded, and one man and one woman survived on the raft on which they collected all kinds of animals and bats. This is not different. In Ottawa, a deluge covered the whole earth. A lone man named Nana Bozo escaped by floating on a piece of bark. So likewise, these are the randomly selected story among the 300 flood story by Mark Isaac. So through all this story, these are selected from different continents, different countries, and from different tribes. So from this 15 example itself, our conclusion would be same with the conclusion we have found in the notes yesterday, that the flood story of Genesis very similar to the Epic of Gilgamesh regarding the number of days and regarding the story. So compared to all this story, this Greek is very similar, is the nearest in terms of similarity. But the more similar ones is the Sumerian flood story. That is what we have discussed yesterday. Because by talking about Sumerian, the Sumerians were the Babylonians living together with the Babylonians. They were from the same area where civilization has started. So we can take it for granted that all these flood stories are being from the same source, from the real happenings. If the flood do not really occur on the earth, how could people of different races, different continents have that story in their own, in their own story, in their own tradition? They have such story. So we can conclude that the Genesis flood, the biblical narratives, is the most original one, and all the other flood story are thus a polluted one. Since all the people of the earth have this flood story, it means that all people came from the same place, from one man. All people came out from one man. That is from Adam or from Noah. Even before the other reason why the flood story is different is because during those ancient days there is no writing. People do not develop the art of writing. So if there is no art of writing, there is nowhere to record the true story. So it is handed by this oral tradition that grandparents had told to their grandchildren about the story, and those children had told the story to their sons and daughters and their grandchildren. So through the passing of time, the story became more and more polluted, and it deviates away from the original narratives. But still then, it still contained the theme of the original story. So this is about the flood. And let's go to the notes. Let's back to the note. The finding of Noah's Ark. During World War II, Russian aviators saw the Ark at Mount Ararat, photographed it, and drew plans on it, and sent it to the Tsars. The Tsars were the ruler of Russia during those days. Subsequently, a Turkish army captain made a discovery in locating Noah's Ark. On an aerial photo of a mountain 20 miles south of the traditional Ararat, he saw a boat-shaped foam some 500 feet long. Most recently, in 1998, those photographs were uncovered by CIA to the modern world. So all these pictures, all these videos are being found in YouTube. The discovery of Noah's Ark. If you have typed the word discovery of Noah's Ark, you can see all those videos of Noah's Ark, the findings of Noah's Ark. And this particular story which I have mentioned here, I have already given you notes on special studies of Genesis 1 to 11. In that page 51, the details will be found there. How did the Turkish captain make a discovery? This mountain, this Ararat mountain, is a very rugged mountain where it is very difficult to access through those mountains. So it is because of that it is very difficult to make the discovery before. It is only after these reports of the Turkish captain that people are interested. It was discovered during the World War II times, but when the Turkish captain had submitted the report to the Tsars of Russia, since the Tsars of Russia are against Christianity, they are hiding all those findings. They do not publish those findings, those reports. It is them who send the expedition to Ararat. But when their findings has been reported, the rulers, the Tsars, do not want to publish those findings of the Turkish army captain. But in 1998, it came in the newspaper. Those hidden writings, those hidden reports has been found out by the American CIA, and it was published in 1998. All those which has been originally found in those days of Second World War has been revealed to the modern world. In that newspaper, we can still have the picture of that newspaper. And in page 51, 52, I have given you some little details of that newspaper. In the notes I have given you, you can go through those. So, even the Noah's Ark, the materials, the building materials are also being found out by the archaeologists. And when they compare the finding, it is very similar to what the Bible has said about the length, the breadth, the width, and the place of the landing place of the ark. It is very similar to what the Bible has said. So if you just type those words in the Google, you can see yourself the findings of Noah's Ark. Many videos are also being made out, and many films, many movies are also made out of those findings. So the last one for today will be the Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel. The structure which the Babel builder attempted to erect and which became the symbol of their God-defined disobedience and pride is brightly illuminated by Mesopotamian buildings, particularly the sacred temples towers called the ziggurats. In Genesis chapter 11, we have learned about the story of the building of Babel. And in that Tower of Babel, we have seen the detailed picture or the detailed story in Genesis. And until these days, in Mesopotamia, or in different parts of the earth, in different parts of the world, these ziggurats are very common until these days. These ziggurats. If since we have ziggurat is in this shape, so if you type the word ziggurat, it will be like this shape. So like this building design is very common. Very common in those days. Many archaeological findings like this type of structure has been found, which the Assyrian or Babylonian what ziggurats denotes the pinnacle. Pinnacle means mountain top. Ziggurats means mountain top. Gigantic artificial mountains of sun-dried brick. Okay, sun-dried brick. And even the archaeologists believe that the exact place where this Tower of Babel has been built, and some believe that the exact place was also being found. And what they have said is that during the time of Saddam Hussein tried to build a very big building, a very magnificent building in that particular spot where the Tower of Babel had collapsed. But many in that Mesopotamian, in that Iraq history, it has been told that in that supposed location of that Tower of Babel, many kings, many ancient kings had tried to build building, but they failed. They failed means they could not succeed in building any tower there. They may start building the tower, but there is a disturbance, maybe war or maybe pestilence, disease, like that. So they could not continue. Many people tried to build, but they were in failure. And the last one, the last man, the last king, or the last president who tried to build a tower was Saddam Hussein. But still then, before starting the foundation, when he was about to start the foundation, Iraq war broke out. And until this day, no man could build a tower. That is what is being told. That may be true also. The Assyrian Babylon, what ziggurat denotes a pinnacle, mountain top, and the ziggurats were gigantic artificial mountains of sun-dried brick. The oldest recovered ziggurat is that ancient Uruk. Ancient Uruk, Ur, is the place of Abraham, Uruk. Biblical Erech. The oldest ziggurat has been found in ancient Uruk. That has been found out. Uruk, the place of Uruk has been found out. And that particular place has been mentioned in Genesis chapter 10 verse 10. The biblical Uruk. Now the place is not Uruk anymore, but it is, the modern is Urka, dating from the later part of the 4th century BC. So today, our lesson should be this much about the Garden of Eden, the fall of man, beginning of civilization, long life occurred, the flood, the finding of Noah's Ark, and the Tower of Babel. So I'm selecting only this much from Genesis chapter 1 to Genesis chapter 11. From next time, when we continue the classes, we will study the days of Abraham and archaeological discoveries. So today we are covering up to Genesis. So we say archaeology of Genesis 1 to Genesis 11. All those story from Genesis chapter 1 to 11.